Just talking. I'm just talking, y'all. I'm just talking and no sound. Hey, my name is Eddie Phillips. This is the Erudition Network, and this is the Black History Interactive Program. Usually my sound will come right on right after, but I guess whatever reason, it was a little bit hiccup in the program. But if you are new to this program, this is our weekly Thursday Black History program that we do on the Erudition Network. Our dedication is to make sure that we cover factual Black history that has not often covered. And so we get on here every Thursday, me specifically, and try to go over these things and to make sure that all of you can be informed and pique your curiosity. Tonight, I don't want to belabor too much. Tonight, I have a very, very special guest, and I am excited. I've been excited all day about this session. I was up last night working on a book myself, but he is a best-selling author, an outstanding pastor, one of the people that I greatly enjoy reading his books because he's very knowledgeable and he's very fact-driven. And I don't want to take too long in bringing him on, but I want to introduce to some, right? And just to reintroduce the others, the Honorable Pastor Henry Razor. I'm going to have you on here, Pastor Razor. How you doing?
Hello, hello, hello. I'm sharing this across the platforms that I have right now. It's just wrapping up. But good evening there, Dr. Eddie Phillips. It's good to be on with you tonight. I've been anticipating this, when you were in Chicago here earlier this year, or it was late last year, we did a show and people have been asking, why don't y'all do that again? Why don't you do that again? Why don't you do that again? It's always an honor for me to be on with you because I have the utmost respect for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I want to get right into it. So I had the opportunity the night before, because I'd been very busy. I'm working on my own book, but I sat here and I read this outstanding book here. If you have not gotten this book, you need to get it. Your hands should be itching to go get it because it is greatly needed. This Black History According to God's Word book that you wrote, which is just another in a series of books that you have written, is a really outstanding book. And I'm gonna give you a few moments to talk it up yourself, and then I'm gonna talk it up too, because I was very happy what I read in this book, because a lot of times people, they either lean too heavy on one side and they don't go into the science on the other side. But you didn't do that, which you've never done, and you definitely hit key aspects here. But I'm gonna let you go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, you know what? This book came about. First, let me say this: about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a couple that came and joined our church before they moved here. Tim Lucas and his wife came. They joined our church, and they've since moved to St. Louis, but they still follow us. But they joined, and Tim kept telling me, "Man, you got to meet my brother-in-law Eddie." He said, "You know." He said, "Man, you guys are going to hit it off." That's all he kept saying. You guys, whenever you guys are going to meet. And I got to say, this has probably been one of the most fulfilling connections that I've made, that I've ever made in my life. Why? Because what I did was I approached Black history as a pastor, from the Bible, from a biblical perspective, right? And I met you, who was doing Black history as a Christian, but you were doing historical, scientific, and all that. And when I found out how accurate the stuff that I was doing was based upon the stuff that the things that you were doing, it floored me, because I was just going from my knowledge and my studying throughout 45, 50 years of studying the Bible, and researching the things around the Bible. See, that's a lot of times, we want to just stick with just the Bible. But I think in order to defend it, in order to defend the word, I needed more than just to stick to the Bible. I needed to know the time period. I need to know some things from history. And as a pastor, I'm always getting questions from people, where are the dinosaurs in the Bible? And where are the Black people? Where are the Black people in the Bible? And so I did my first book, Biblically Black and Blessed, and it was really to show the relationship and to show that Black people are in the Bible. They're a major part of the Bible. I did the second book, The Children of the Ethiopians. And that's based upon the fact that in ancient Africa and in biblical times, everything south of the Sahara was termed Ethiopia. Now, some scholars say the whole continent was Ethiopia, Kemet and Ethiopia. But I went with, I go with the thought that sub-Saharan Africa is Ethiopia, because there's in Ethiopia, Libya, India. In India. What am I talking about? Ethiopia, Libya, and Egypt are mentioned in the same Bible verse, right? So it seemed like the inspired word had it separated as Ethiopia, and so that was the second one. His third book, Black History, I really want people to use this to teach. I want people to use this to share. I envision this. As a matter of fact, I am speaking at a church this Sunday, a large church in Indiana, Black History. I want people to use this and to teach the real, true Black history, because you can't start Black history at 1619 and say that it's true Black history, right? Because my problem with that then is when we do that, we give other people control of our history. Like when we say, well, he was the first person to walk in space. Well, other people walked there before him, but he was the first one. We let you do that, right? So, but we were a people long before 1619. And the narrative that's built around the history that starts at 1619 is that you ought to be grateful for what we've done for you to get to the point, right? As a matter of fact, I saw an article where the CEO of Whitewater, the military firm, he's pushing that we should go, or America and the European nations should go back and recolonize Africa. That's what he's pushing now. Well, and he's talking about the state of Africa. If you left Africa alone to begin with,
yeah,
the state of Africa is a result of what you did to begin with, right? We need to know our true history. I got tired of people telling me Christianity is the white man's religion. I got tired of people telling me that we were abandoning the spirituality of our African ancestors. All of that I addressed in this book, and so that we can teach it. So it's written so that the Bible can be tied to history. And when you look at the Bible and history tied together, you see the Black people are prominent throughout. There's no ifs, and buts, or ors. We're prominent. One chapter in this book is called "When the World Was Black."
Yeah, it's a great chapter.
When the world was black, and we're taking a historical timeline. Now, somebody said, "Well, when we were black," I probably could have been more accurate to say when everybody in the world was African, right? Because it's on the African continent. But what are Africans? Black people. So I wrote this book really so that people could use it to teach, share, and I want people to come away from this book being able to discuss the Black history and to discuss our ancestral history, our ancestral background, and have ample discussions with it. Don't walk away from it, run away from it, let everybody else tell us what our heritage is. We've got it here. Now, there are some things in here that has to correct the record. If you read it, and there's some things that have to correct the record, because a lot of what we get, history that we get, we're getting it from people who got history from people that suppressed us.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up Church of God in Christ. My world history teacher was a Church of God in Christ pastor. I loved it. I preached at his church when I became an adult, and I went back to Memphis and preached at his church. What I found, though, he was teaching me what he taught, what he knew. And as far as the Mesopotamia, I can remember clearly him saying that the people from the Mesopotamia, they don't really know, but they believe that they came from Asia or from east of the Mesopotamia that showed up in there. That's just, and he's a Church of God in Christ people, right? Yes, we do need to take a trip to Africa. And you're right about that. I am looking into that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But he's a Church of God in Christ preacher, and he's reading, he's telling me what he know and what he understand. And I understand that, and so I took that until I actually started reading the Bible and looking at it, and I had to correct the record to get it, but I got it. Right?
Oh, you got it. You got it. I'm gonna tell you. There is. So I have a huge issue, and I think we've talked this before. One of the things that I don't like with historians, I call them pseudo historians, is the idea that people just appeared somewhere. Mm-hmm. Right? That idea of just appearing is ludicrous, and it's usually done to circumvent the idea of, hey, we don't want to tell you the real facts or the truth, or maybe we don't know the truth. But one of the things that I liked about that chapter you're talking about, when the world was black, is, and I don't know if many of you people in the audience know this, but there, over the last 10 years, we've been doing genetic studies. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, don't run from science, because God gave us science.
Exactly.
And we've been doing the genetic studies, and in the genetic studies, we found that people who transitioned out of Africa, who left out of Africa, they call them non-African migrants, right? Because they've left Africa, they've been out of there for some time. They all come out of Africa. But what they found was that they had Neanderthal DNA, Denovesian DNA. They had DNA that some scientists out there are the humans. I don't go along with that. But they're other species, right? And because of this, you can go and check the DNA and you can see the difference. But we can also trace when everybody, like Pastor Razor just said, was African. Everybody was African and shared the same mitochondrial Eve. And we can see when a deviation happens. And so when I read that part, I found nothing wrong with what you were saying. I said, this is absolutely historically correct. This is biblically correct. This is a fact. And you can use multiple sources, historical and science, to prove that it is a fact.
And that I think the failure in the church is not understanding and knowing this. Now, when you look at the records that take us back to the creation of Adam, they really say that Adam was created somewhere around 4000 BC, right? And when you look at when John the Revelator wrote the book of Revelations at about 90 AD, so the chronological time frame of the Bible, although it talks about things that was before Adam, and it talks about things that are going to happen at the very end. But I'm just talking about the chronological from the creation of Adam to when John, it's about 4,000 years. Now, when we break those 4,000 years down, 2,000 of those years are covered in Genesis 1 to Genesis 11. And those 2,000 years occurred on the continent of Africa. Right? Now, the reason there's not a whole lot to it or that we know about it is because those first 10 chapters that we don't really see the people moving off the continent of Africa until the 11th chapter. I talk about that in the book because King James did something totally different. He manipulated that, but we see them moving off. But all we have really is a couple of stories about Adam and some of the early Noah, and then we have biological charts. We have tables, and we can kind of come up to 2,000 years as I did in the book. Because it tells us this one lived this at the time, had a baby, had son or had daughters, and lived so many years after that. We build up a chronological table. What you have then is 2,000 of those 4,000 chronological years are the continent of Africa. For that time, everybody was African, and everybody was Black. You can't get around it. I've had people challenge me on that, but they challenge me based upon what they believe. I said, well, let's go look at the Bible and let's go look at history. And when they get that, they say, well, yeah, we understand what you're saying, but what about this? What about? I'm not. What about? Those are your opinions. We're going to be Bible believing people. Then they did not leave the continent of Africa until the 11th chapter of Genesis. Everything that happened prior to that was on the continent of Africa. And that there's no ifs, and buts, or ors about it, right? And we get a whole lot. Now, we have to go back and look at a whole lot of our history. And those 11 chapters are in the church are probably the least talked about, the least preached on. The only thing you hear people preach a lot on is the creation of Adam and Eve and on Noah. You know, the rest of it they don't deal with. Then they pick up by Abraham. There is an abundance and a wealth of information in those 10 chapters, but it's all the people were Black. Or let me put it this way. All the people
were African. Yeah, they're African. You know, I there's a part that I like that you specified in the book too, that it made me crack up when I read it. You know, historians, and I just be honest with it. A lot of historians lie, right? And they have reason to lie, to keep their studies and their degrees and the validation of what they think they know. But the thing that made me crack up is you say in the book and you talk about the flood, right? and you talk about Noah. And one of the things that is always it always bristles me is when historians say, "Hey, well, man, he traveled over these ice bridges, he traveled over a coast," and I agree with all of those things. He traveled along the coast, but they always try to act like man did not know how to build a boat, right? and I laughed when I saw that, because I said, you know what? If Noah survived the flood on an ark, which is a boat, what makes you think that man did not know how to build a boat?
Exactly.
And if he can build a boat, that means he can go anywhere, right? He can travel over anything. And they was on that boat a long time. So that's a seaworthy vessel. That's my Navy side. But the thing is, though, I laughed when I saw that, because most people, when you talk to them, they was like, well, there's no way that they could have got there. What do you mean there's no way they could have got there?
Well, and you think about it. And I think leading up to that point in the book, I show where God he evicted Adam and Eve on the east side of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Then he sent Cain farther east. Cain went east. And then he said, as they journeyed eastward. So when they got to the population, the people were growing, the amount of people going, they got to the Mediterranean. Of course they knew how to build a boat. They were not that far removed from their great-grandfather Noah or their grandfathers who was on the boat. You take Nimrod.
Yeah.
Nimrod that went over, that took them. Well, Nimrod was the son of Cush, was the grandson of Ham. His grandfather was on the boat.
I agree. It's just something. When I saw that, I laughed. I say, he broke it down real quickly to let you understand, right? And that goes and challenges a lot of things that you're going to hear from a lot of people who don't want to accept the biblical truth of the Bible. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Speak about Nimrod. I was recently looking around for my notes for the book I'm working on, and I was looking at there is a place. It's in Algeria. It's called Tassel, Algeria. And on the walls of these rock engravings, it is believed that it shows Nimrod at a hunting party. And this is what the people, the people of that land believe. This is what the people have understood for generations. Again, it is amazing to me that people fight against the idea, and they've down talked Nimrod and being, something less than. And I like how in this book you give it the proper reverence that it needs to have, because this was a well-respected leader and man of his time, and often hidden in history.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, it fit their narrative to downplay and to demonize Nimrod, because to a great extent, Nimrod is responsible for saving civilization. Now, the Bible said he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. If you look at Noah after the flood, after the waters had receded, food was scarce. The ground, the earth was not comparable for providing the vegetation and do this, but the animals were multiplying. Mm-hmm. And so God told Noah, I'm giving you all these creatures that move for food. He said, but you can't eat them with the blood in them. So you can't eat them alive. That means you got to hunt them. You got to capture them, right? Nimrod is a mighty hunter before the Lord. He actually preserved civilization by becoming an expert hunter and teaching people to hunt. Now watch this. When I read Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, mm-hmm. who did multiple archaeological excavations into the southern Mesopotamia, and when the Lord told me to look at the Sumerians, I went and started reading the output of a lot of these guys. Mm-hmm. They uncovered the king's list of Kish. a document that they
Mhm.
right. And when they deciphered the writing of the document, it had listed, I want to say 30, it may have been more, the greatest kings. Nimrod was listed as the greatest king ever in the Mesopotamia. And there was a note in Nimrod that said he was known as the one who stabilized the land. He stabilized the land. So to a great extent, and then he was a kingdom builder, because after he stabilized the land in the southern Mesopotamia, he went up and built Babylon and Erudition and Tarshish and all these other places up in the northern Mesopotamia. And so Nimrod, to a great extent, is responsible for the preservation and the establishment of civilization. Now, the problem that most of the Western historian and Western people have with him is that he's the son of Cush. So you can't get around the fact that he was a black man, and he was a leader of the people when all the people were one, and there were no Jews, there were no Gentiles. All the people were one language. He was their leader. And so they came out of Africa. So it fixed their name. They have to demonize Nimrod, because if they give him the credit that the Bible gives him, then they have to acknowledge that a black man is responsible I shouldn't say is responsible, is the primary catalyst for the preservation and the establishment of civilization. Nimrod was a black man. He was a son of Cush. All we hear about him was building the tower. But those people that he led not only built the tower, they started writing. They set the parameters of time, 24 hours, 12-hour AM, 12-hour PM, 60-minute hour, 60-second minute. They had the first pharmacists. They did the first almanac. They had the first doctors. They had the first schools. They had the first government. Nimrod was the first human ruler, the ruler of human government. He had the first government. They established the first Congress and legislative houses back in the lower Mesopotamia, and Nimrod was the king. So if you accept Nimrod as the Bible presents him, then you have to acknowledge that a black man was at the core, or an African was at the core of God creating civilization. And that's something that a lot of people do not want to acknowledge,
not at all,
to accept. So they'd rather say that we don't know when the Sumerians showed up, but they showed up. Now, here's what I found interesting is I was studying one of the archaeologists. They said, we don't know when the Sumerians showed up, but we do have evidence that the Sumerians were not the first people to inhabit the land. And I'm thinking, read the Bible. It makes sense. Africans first got there, and the Sumerians were an offshoot. They were the descendants of the Africans in there. They couldn't be Africans anymore because they're not in Africa. They're in the lower Mesopotamia.
They're in the lower Mesopotamia. You know, the thing is, there are so many challenges. You have different people. We know that we've had the Dunnings and the different people over here. A lot of people don't realize how much study is done by British and European scholars, historians, and archaeologists. And you know, I'm always reminded of Hugh Trevor Roper. If anybody doesn't know who Trevor Roper is, Hugh Trevor Roper was a famous historian and scholar and academic in Oxford. And in the 60s, he was quoted as saying that it probably one day there will be something notable that comes out of Africa. But as of now, Africa has never provided anything of value to history. So when you have academics and reverend scholars teaching this, no, it's never advantageous for them to talk about Nimrod or talk about the migration of Africans into the Mesopotamia. And so that is why it's so important. But you hit a great point in this book. When we think about the kingdom of Cush, people forget how the kingdom of Cush was one of the most powerful kingdoms in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And even with the Mesopotamian interaction between them, if you look at, say, the Eridu and Sumer and Sumer, and you look at what was being done in the kingdom of Cush in Africa, they all gave reverence to Nimrod. Mm-hmm. It is in their history, it is in their writing, it is in their artifacts. So we know that this individual existed, and we know that the migration out of Africa into Mesopotamia is important. And we know that these were African people who did this because they left. I tell my sons all the time, God will not be mocked. There are things that are left on purpose for us to find, so that when they say whatever they want to say, we go, no, we picked this up right here. Right. We just saw this.
Exactly. And I've read it a few times, just what you said. They'll say, we don't know when the Sumerians got there. We just know at about this time period they showed up. Don't make sense, right? Because people just don't appear, and people just don't disappear, right? They came from somewhere. They came from somewhere into the Mesopotamia. But Nimrod is an interesting human. He's an interesting person, because I said this to our church. Those people at that time were a lot more intelligent than we were.
Yes,
we are. I mean, I said, I don't know. God needs to do what they did. These were special people. They had an intellect that was way up there. I mean, they had an intellect that was way. Then you think about, how for years we were talking about, the Empire State Building. What a marvel! How Nimrod was building a tower that would have went all the way up to heaven. And God said, I got to stop these people because they together, and they would do it, right? They were building towers or ziggurats back then. These people, they started writing. They created that. They invented that. These were extremely intelligent African people. Now, here's where I really, really, really have to drive home a point with believers, especially as a pastor. We hear the lie that's been propagated that our African ancestors worship idol gods or worship false gods. And that's far from the truth. That's far from the truth. I covered this Sunday in church. When they built statues or whatever, or they created some things to the sun and to the moon, things that were great. God had not given any instruction. He had not revealed himself to anyone, right? And so these people were so smart that they could look around and see the creation that God, that the supreme being had created, and realize there has to be something greater than us. There's somebody more powerful than us. And we're going to find them, and that's who we're going to give a homage to, and we're going to worship. Paul said it this way in Acts the 17th chapter. He said when they built those statues and things like that to replicate, they were not trying to overtake God. They were not trying to reject God or rejecting God. They were saying there's something greater than us, and we don't know what it is. So anything that was greater, like the sun or like the wind or like this thing, they would say, this has to be it. The Apostle Paul said in Acts 17th chapter, he said, God winked at that ignorance. because he knew that they did not know, because he had not revealed himself. So they were not they were worshiping a supreme being even when they didn't even know who God was. They just looked around and said, there are things here that are out of our control, things here that had to be done by something greater than us. We need to find that greater, and we need to give that greater the proper respect and the proper honor and the proper. So they wasn't worshiping. They wasn't worshiping any idol gods. In a way, what they were really doing was, in their intellect, they were trying to find out who God is. Yeah. They were trying to find, and Paul said God just winked at it. He winked at it. He overlooked it, because how else would they know who he was if he had not revealed himself to them? And I try to bring that out, because in order to understand the spirituality of our African ancestors, we need to know how God governed men. And that's why I did God governance with spirituality during the time when they were in the Mesopotamia. Because anytime you read about the lower Mesopotamia, the one thing that's going to be consistent across everybody is the amount of what they call idol worship, the different type of God, different type of gods and things like that. But these were just highly intelligent people trying to pay respect to a supreme being who has not revealed himself to them. And they're looking around and said, we know we didn't cause that tree to grow up like that. We know that we didn't bring the sun to the sun. We don't control that. Something's greater than us. So they set out to try and attempted to locate or to find that greater. And
that's a great point, because when you look at what was done, and we historically believe that they built ziggurats, and ziggurats are stacked buildings. Mm-hmm. But I've been telling people for quite some years now, rather you look over here, when we call it the mound and the hill builders, or rather you look in Africa and you see mounds or hills, or you see stacked buildings that look like ziggurats, or even if you go further east into the Indus, and if you go further east even into Asia, you start to still see these stacked buildings. These people built these buildings as temples, and they believed that the higher that they stacked it would take in the presence of God. And the only people, it wasn't just and it was usually at the center of town, and the only people who could go into these places were priests, kings, or special people who were allowed. Everybody couldn't go in there. Even to the cause of death, right? And so when you read history and you understand, where did that knowledge come from? That knowledge was passed on and on and on and on. And these buildings, they even though when the language got confounded, right? The understanding. See, I was talking this the other day. It's not that God stripped them. He could have stripped them of language. He could have made us all mute.
Yes, he could have.
But what he did was he confounded it so that, like you said, you make a point in the book. Okay, these people could do anything, right? I made them. They are special, right? They can do anything. And especially when they're together and they got that faith in God, right? Because I think what is often lost is the fact that they had that shared faith of, hey, let's do this. And we thinking we honoring God. And God's like, y'all need to keep on moving. And I got a plan here.
You see that God, when Nimrod built the tower, God didn't come down and say they did something evil. He didn't come down and say how bad they were. He came down and he said, look, these people are one mind and they're working together. And they will accomplish what they set out to do. So I don't want them to do that. God was establishing God's plan is to establish his kingdom on earth like it is in heaven. That's what Jesus said, pray that your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So God's plan is to establish his kingdom on earth like it is in heaven. So his plan, he was pushing them east from the Adam, from the Garden of Eve. From the time he evicted Adam and Eve, he was pushing them east. And I call that out. I lay that lineage out, right? He was spreading the people out over the world. And the Nimrod and the Sumerians, and I say all the time, Nimrod and them, like us black folks say, Nimrod and them, they were so smart, they were saying, look, let's just build a tower here so we can make a name for ourselves, so that we can be remembered, so that we can remain organized. And so we can do it. And God said, no, that's not what I want you all to do. I want you all to spread out. So he spread us out. And
hold on, let's look at some of Tina's comments, because she's thinking we missing her comments. What I love that it's an easy read. Okay, I think we saw this one. Teachers and leaders don't always know what books to read. They teach their curriculum. It's a major difference. I think we both agree to that. That's what's going on. I saw you said something about the meat thing. Some people have tried to convict gospel for eating meat, but Pastor Razor, you're showing the Bible said eat the meat.
That's what he told Noah. He told Noah in the 9th chapter of Genesis, after the flood. He told Noah in the 9th chapter of Genesis. He told Noah, just a moment, I'll call you back, Dr. Winston, I'm on the broadcast. He told Noah in the 9th chapter of Genesis, he told him, he said, look, I'm giving you all this here for food. And so God told him that's what they were for.
Yeah. It's I will tell you, it's hard, because what happens is there's a lot of knowledge being put out in this program, you all, and this is interactive. And I want you to be interactive, but the thing is, Pastor Ray is putting so much stuff out here for you, and you're going to be able to get more. Get the book, right? So that you can actually read what we're talking about too. But I do want you to be interactive. I'm not ignoring your comments, but we do want to make sure that we're covering these things, because they're not covered. Let's just be real here. This stuff that a lot of the things that we've talked about so far, you ain't gonna find that in a lot of your history books, and they're gonna get around it. And now with politics, the way they're doing politics now, pretty soon you may not find it in any books, because they're trying to bar all books.
Yep.
So they're not just stopping with the school books. They're like, hey, let's just kill this where it lays. I want to say thank you. When you wrote your second book, your Biblically Black and Blessed too, you honored me to write the foreword to that, and I just wanted to openly tell you I really, really, really appreciate it. You reaching out to me to do that, because I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed this book. I think that the things that you're writing are so essential to be taught, not just in the church, because the church does need it, but in schools and places. We have to do a better job. And then the thing about these books, and I thank God, because I think God has really been touching me recently to make me understand. I myself have pulled back from even writing anything. I said, I'm not going to write any books. I'm just going to teach. And the bug hit me, because I was like, no, I need to go. When I went on, me and you did that show in Chicago, somebody asked, when you going to write a book, right? You put a book out of any kind. And so I said, I don't know. Because I knew the work. And let me tell y'all something. Writing these books, you could be given the knowledge and the understanding, but the task is the task, right? It takes long nights. It takes times where you have to focus on what God is giving you to do. And I greatly appreciate you, sir, for doing that, because I know it can be hard.
It's a job. In the church, a lot of people when they write books, it's their story. Basically telling about where they come from and that's primarily what it is. My books they're different, right? Because I'm actually addressing things that I've had questions about come to me, and especially since I became a pastor, people they come questions, and there were things that I as I open this book up, I talk about how I really got started. In Black, and looking into our Black history, and our history other than 1619 was that of a youth congress in Arkansas, and I heard Bishop Walker preach on Noah having 3 sons and how Ham was the father of Cush, and Cush was the Ethiopians, and he explained, and it hit me. Okay, then how come we're not hearing any of this in the church? How come? Because there's got to be a lot more to it. And that was 45 years ago, at least. And that started me to actually dig into the Bible, because the narrative that have been put forth, the Bible narrative and the Christian narrative that been put forth to us, has pretty much eliminated Black people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they eliminated Black people pretty much so. They said there's Jews and Gentiles, or there's Shemites, people from Shem, and Gentiles. Well, the Bible say that the Gentiles are people from Japheth. What about the people from Ham? And so they just told us we were Gentiles because they were Gentiles. But the Ethiopians is a totally different group, a different block of people. When I say the Ethiopians, the people from Ham, the Africans, I probably should call them the Africans, because you got Ethiopians, Egyptians, Libyans,
Mm-hmm.
all that, according to the Bible. So, but the descendants of Ham, if Noah had 3 sons, and Shem is the father of the Shemites, which is Arabs and Jews, and Japheth is the father of the Caucasoids, the Gentiles, the Caucasoids. So you got Jews and Gentiles. What about Ham?
Mm-hmm.
The father of Cush, Mizraim, which is Egypt, Put, which is Libya, and he was the father of all the African. Canaan, which is the land that Israel have now, is their land, but he was the father of all of them. What about those people? You know, so they were just eliminated. And when you look at it, these people are really the closest tied to the original people, because you know that when the people came over from Africa into the Mesopotamia, and they were all one, there were no Jews, Gentiles, or Africans, right? They were all one people. But we know that that Cush's son Nimrod was their leader. He was the king. And so we see there that if we look at that, there should be a tighter case, and there should be a more forceful case for Ethiopians or for Black people in biblical history. There should be more of this talk. There's more Black history in the Bible than there is Gentile history.
I agree. Yep, that's absolutely true.
Now, we know Israel, we know Jewish because it's telling their story. But we talk about Jews and Gentiles. There's more Ethiopian history, and the best thing about the Ethiopian or the Hamite history in the Bible is that 99% of it is good. It's positive.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't we be preaching that, especially in our churches?
You know, and that's the thing. You know, it's so much of teaching history, especially history that's based Black history. It gets hard because I think we've been conditioned to think that Black history is all bad, right? And that's a problem, because, you know, like as quoting different historians and people, but not only that, the African American, this book is really needed in this country, but all over the world. But the African American really needs these types of books, because we have fallen into the trap of thinking that we have to validate ourselves to slavery. Every Black History Month, every year, whenever they talk about history, the first thing they do is they drop you off. You see a plantation, you see somebody in chains. Mm-hmm. And our history is so much larger than that. Mm-hmm. It's so much grander than that. I wanted to talk to you about Sheba and Saba, Kingdom of Saba. I like that you go into the Queen of Sheba into Makeda, because again, this is a venerated, validated, factual part of history that is not talked about.
Right.
that is left out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to speak on that, because you wrote a very great part of it in this book, that really goes into why it's important that we know that part of history.
Oh yeah, the Queen of Sheba, Seba, but and really Ethiopian history have her listed as Makeda.
Mm-hmm.
Makeda. And I think about 9 and 800. I put it on the timeline. She visited Solomon. We talk about that, and you'll hear people preach that in churches, but they preach it from the perspective that Solomon was so great, and she came. Matter of fact, my wife and I were going over New Year. We went down south, and we was listening to this preacher, this biggest preacher and biggest church probably in America. And he's a Caucasian. He was talking about how the Queen of Sheba went down and bowed to Solomon, and you know, all that. The Bible never says she bowed to Solomon. Look, in the 72nd chapter of Psalms, Solomon prays. He's praying, Lord, make my name great. Make me known to the world. I want the world to know who I am. How does God do that? There's a queen in sub-Saharan Africa, Sheba, but at that time, all of that was known on the map as Ethiopia, named Makeda. She's already powerful. She's rich. She's established, and she's world renowned. Now, this is happening. Her story comes about 1,000 years after God spread them from the Mesopotamia, right? Mm-hmm. So she's world renowned already. People are coming from all over the world because of her, to see her, to get assistance from her, to whatever help that they can get from her. But she's already world renowned. And she hears about this young upstart up in Canaan by the name of Solomon. And so she said, let me go and check this out for myself. Now, Solomon wants to be somebody on the global scene in the world, but he's not yet. He's just the king of Israel. He's wise. He has more wisdom than anybody else, but nobody knows who he is. Mm-hmm. She goes up there. The very first thing she does is she gives him a test. Ask him some hard. So that tells you how intelligent she was. She's testing Solomon, who was the wisest man that we say the wisest man ever lived. She gives him a test. He passed the test. Then she spends a few days. She observes him, sees his structure, sees everything, and she said, "You know what? The things that I've been hearing about you is true." She announces him to the world. Now Solomon becomes a global figure because she announces him to the world. Now, that's where we leave it off at. But in Ethiopian history, her and Solomon had a child. Yep. And the Ethiopians credit that child to being the first of the Solomonic dynasty, Ethiopian dynasty that ruled for God knows. I think his name was Menek.
Yeah, Menek. Well, yes.
That's it. And Solomon, and so this was all in history. This shows you the power, the prominence of the Ethiopians, so much so that in a way she announced Solomon to the world. And Solomon became credible because she announced him. Solomon became a somebody because she announced him. Now we know God was behind this, so God used the Ethiopian queen to present Solomon to the world.
It's a great part of our history, and I think, I love that you covered it, because too often we don't. That kingdom, is a great kingdom, and what it was able to, because I'm writing about that right now, and what it was able to do, right, is amazing. And I think that, again, this is something that just needs to be tied in to our people. All right, what is she asking now? Tina's saying that your thing wasn't coming up. Do other American church leaders have this information? Have you met with superintendents and presiding bishops of the Church of God in Christ or sharing knowledge with Pastor Razor?
No. And you know what? This information is in the Bible, right? And no, I haven't met with anyone. We are starting to get out now. I'm actually speaking at a large Sunday, but we are starting to get out and try to get this information into that. That's why this book was written, so people could teach from it. You know,
I agree.
The whole idea of this book was so that people could teach from it, and they don't have to take my word from the book. I got scripture posted with everything that's in here.
And there's the thing, you got scripture in there, and I'm gonna tell you from having a baseline of history, it's accurate.
Yeah.
When you look at the what is it, the Kebra Nagas, right, which is the glory of kings, they write about Makeda. When you go and you look in the kingdom of Axum, they when they've dug up the ancient relics of the kingdom of Axum, they have reference and things about her, and not only her, but her relationship with Solomon. We know that these are historically factual things.
Yes.
Now, what we do with those facts is really what the issue. That's the crust of what we're talking about tonight. People, you need these types of books. You need these books so that you can start to pique your mind and go, wait a minute. I never, because I look, when I was a kid, I would read the Bible and sit in church, and I didn't. Some of the people that was reading about in the Bible, I thought, okay, they must be Middle Eastern. They not talking about anybody that look like me, right? Nobody that's area. So now you understand. These are Africans. These are people who looked a lot like us.
Well, you think about it also. I've never heard anybody preach on Zerah the Ethiopian, primarily because he was coming to take Israel down. And I understand that, right? Israel was supposed to be God's priest, and Zerah was coming to take him down. But think about, Zerah came up to fight Israel. He was going to fight him with 1 million soldiers and 300,000 chariots. That gives you a picture of the might and power of the Ethiopians at that day. Tahaka was such a powerful king of Ethiopia that when Israel got in trouble, when the priests got in trouble, because the priests wasn't supposed to be fight. They're not fighters, they're priests. When Israel got in trouble, God said, I'm not going to send Tahaka and the Ethiopians up there to deliver you. I'm just going to start a rumor that they coming. And when the enemy hear that they coming, that's going to be enough. That's how powerful the African nations were in biblical times.
Yeah. And respected. They were respected. And I think that is lost on a lot of people. These Africans were respected. Rather you look, even if you look at the Greeks or the Romans later on, you know, me and Tina had the privilege of being on Pastor Gibson's Sunday school last Sunday. And I was telling them, you know, as I was writing through this book that I'm working on, I came across some documents from the Exum King Azana. And it was such an interesting story to me because it shows something that you write about in this book. We got this idea that Africans just like to accept multiple gods. But this was after Christ, when two Phoenician young men who were on a boat with their uncle, they were abducted. Everybody on the boat was killed, and they were taken into the kingdom of Axum. And one of them became, this man named Prometheus, became the friend of the prince, right? When King Azana was a prince. And he taught him or he had discussions. It doesn't say he taught him. He had discussions with him about Christ. Mm-hmm. And he accepted Christ based on the ideas that had already been shared with Africa, because let's understand that the Ptolemaic Empire and all of that played a part in his understanding that Christ is real. Mm-hmm. And he accepted Christianity in a kingdom at a time in Africa where a lot of people, if you listen to a lot of the historians and people now, they're telling that wasn't, no, he took it as a fact, mm-hmm. and changed his entire government, mm-hmm. and their way of life, mm-hmm. to follow Christianity. This shows you that the African, like you said, was not someone that was seeking to worship idols and false gods, just simply trying to figure out, Lord, who are you? Mm-hmm. And once you establish and expose yourself and let us know who you are, we're going to give you the due diligence and honor. And that is what they did.
Well, when you went when I'm building my historical timeline, and I know you got to go here, there is, we hear all the time, Christianity is a white man's religion. But when you go to Acts, the 10th chapter, that's where they were first called, in Antioch, they were first called Christians, the disciples.
Yep.
4 people are mentioned in that revival, in that time period in Antioch, and they're mentioned in the 13th chapter while they're still in Antioch. There were 4 people mentioned at the heart of that movement where they were first called Christians. There was Barnabas, there was Simon Niger, Simon the Niger, the Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and then there was like a Mena. And the Bible said that Mena came up with Herod. So he was probably Greek, maybe Roman or maybe Greek. But the other 3 people mentioned in Antioch at the time that they were first called Christians are Black people. Barnabas from Cyprus, which was an island in North Africa with no Suez Canal. It was west of Canaan land. So they've been African. But Simeon, they identify him as Simeon the Niger, which is sub-Saharan Africa, and Lucius of Cyrene, which is Libya, Africa. So 3 of the 4 people mentioned when they were first called Christians at Antioch were Black people. And I bring that out in this book. They were Black people.
It's not, I really appreciate you coming on. I love this book. I'm definitely, you're gonna see it a couple of times pushed on the Erudition Network. We definitely gonna be putting it out there, trying to make sure people go out and get this book. Tina, I think I'll take your last comment because you've been active in here tonight. I'm very happy that you are, baby. I appreciate it. I'm very much unpolished, and I'm not aware when I say something that hurts someone's feelings, because I never intend to hurt anyone's feelings or challenge them. Part of my ignorance or anything I may say or have said, I'm weighing what scholarly writing and scholarly teachings has said, and mentally tracking. No, I don't. No, nobody's taking offense to us. I think what it is, it's what we've been taught. Mm-hmm. We've been taught a certain way and conditioned a certain way, and it's
that's how powerful when you separate anybody from their narrative. I was telling some people, look. I was teaching this here. These were eye openers as the Lord began to deal with me on these things, because a lot of this was eye opening. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, I'm reading it right here all the time, but I'm preaching the narrative that they've been. And there are a lot of things I had questions, didn't make sense. So no. And to be totally honest with you, we need to have our feelings hurt if it's going to cause us to open up our eyes and seek for understanding.
Seek for understanding.
We need to have our feelings hurt.
Man, this hour went fast. I love when we get on to go talk, because we could talk for a while and barely touch the surface, right? Because there's so much out here. But I appreciate you. I know you have such a busy schedule, and I appreciate you for coming on. I told Mike them last week. I was like, yeah, you got him on first, but I'm gonna see if I can get him up on here to go talk about this. I'm supposed to be on their show tomorrow. But I appreciate you for many reasons, because sometimes I need a fire put under me, and you help me to do that by telling me, hey, Eddie, in a nice way, go ahead and do what you need to do.
I'm trying to get people onto the Erudition Network. I'm trying to get people to sign up and did we get past 99?
We did. We got past. I think we did. Well, I saw one of our things did go up. I got a thing in and said it did go up, and I do appreciate you doing that, because we're trying to. I that's one of the reasons with this book. Somebody asked me, said, Eddie, you've been working on this book for about a month now. I'm like, yeah. I took the crazy route of saying I wanted to make it interactive, make an ebook interactive, and then do a print book, because you got to get it validated when you do the print. And so, but you said something right there a moment ago as I was writing this book, and I was going through it's 101 questions, and I said, this is not just, God, let me understand, this ain't just a quiz book. No, this ain't just a quiz book, because what I'm touching on here, when I read your book there for yesterday, I realized that it was aligned. I hadn't even read this book, ladies and gentlemen. I hadn't read it yet. And I started to go back and think about some of the things that I had written in these questions and then the explanations. And I said, oh my God. See, that's God, because that let me understand that, yeah, this is historically and this is biblically accurate. And this is what we need right now. And so, Pastor Reyes, I greatly appreciate you. The boys, they'll be reading this too. So we the whole family gonna be into this book, because it is something that we need to have.
Well, I'm headed out to Texas. I'm gonna be pushing two things other than my book out to Texas, right? I get a chance to talk to a lot of people, so I'm gonna push the Erudition Network.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And I'm gonna push Man Up.
Yes, yes.
I'm all into us building our platform. So when I get out there, I'm going to definitely recommend those two podcasts for what we do. One, Man Up's good for entertainment. They do a lot of good stuff too.
Yeah.
And Erudition Network, Black History.
Yeah, we spend so much time. Then I bounce everything off of the wife and the kids too, right? So everything that we kind of talk about, sometimes I let them know I don't know what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah, but you never disappoint.
Y'all may not be fully aware of the scholarly impact of the information y'all sharing. It's necessary, so hurry up. I know. So let me tell you something. Nobody is a greater pusher than Tina Phillips.
All right, I see. Let's get that. I'm waiting for it.
All right, Pastor Razor, thank you for coming on. The door is always open here with us, because we really appreciate you. Really, really appreciate you. And thank you for your time and coming on with us tonight. So.
Okay, thank you for having me, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
go out
and get that book.
Go out and get the book.
Get that book. We're gonna drop a link, because I didn't drop a link. We'll drop a link in here. You can always hit it on our Erudition Network page. You will see where to get this book and how to acquire Pastor Ray's book. But until next week, until next time, we've been blessed to see you all. I ask that you keep us in your prayers, keep Pastor Ray's and what he's doing in your prayers, and safe travels as he makes his way to go speak at this church, and makes his way down. You say join to Texas, right? To go do that. So keep us all in your prayers, and thank you all for spending this hour with us. It was a good amount of people came up here tonight. Yeah, so that's good. All right, so you all have a good one, and Pastor Ray's, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right, thank you.